Thanks for coming to my tutorial. I'm going to jump right into it. I don't like lengthy tutorials with crazy long beginnings, so I'm going to jump right into it. I start off by using two contrasting fabrics. Sometimes they're the same, most of the times they're contrasting. I have a Spider-Man and a sort of tie-dye, kind of marble-ish blue. You start by placing right sides together. Always make sure you backstitch at the beginning. And on the inside of the mask, I use a 2.4 stitch length. I just feel like the tighter stitch makes for a more secure mask construction. I use a sort of chain stitching method because my demand for masks is so high. So if I'm sewing, this is how I chain stitch. I attach the opposite side of the mask bottom to bottom. And I normally keep that chain going if I have more to do. But here I stop because I'm just doing one for video purposes. And you see where it's attached bottom to bottom. So that when I open them up, flip them up, right sides together, match up the seams, and then I go ahead and I clip the seam together. I don't use pins unless I absolutely need to because I have kids, and using less pins is just easier, less accidents. I match up my bottom seam. I start my stitch right before that middle bottom seam, and you'll see why in a little bit. This is where I start. I use about a 1/8 inch of a seam allowance. I'm not great with my measurements. I just know what it's supposed to look like. I have a great eye for measurements. I add my elastic about a 1/2 inch away so that I have plenty of room to stitch around it. I always backstitch over my elastic so that I know it's going to be secure. If you're a new sewist, before you go to turn your fabric, make sure your needle is down. I know some machines end with a needle in a downward position, but mine doesn't, so I have to manually put it down. I push that elastic in, making sure that it's aligned with the end of the fabric. Make sure your seams are flat here and stitch around. Because I don't use a lot of pins, you'll see me constantly adjusting my fabric to make sure that it's aligned. I just prefer it that way. My elastic for all of my mask sizes, I have 5 different mask sizes, and my elastic is always 5 inches. You probably hear my kids in the background. Again, I tuck in that elastic and I backstitch over it, and this is where I end my stitch. I end my stitch here because I like to add a tag in the corner of my masks. Sometimes I trim corners, but they're so small here they don't really need to be trimmed. They'll turn out just fine. I don't use a pointer to point my ends out all the time. Sometimes I do, most times I don't. But for the masks, I like to use the elastic to pull the corners out because doing that lets me know that my elastic is secure. On each side of my mask, I have pleats. Each pleat is about a 1/2 inch. And I'm great at eyeballing things. Like if I held this to a ruler, it would be a 1/2 inch. But I've been doing it for a little while, so I've always had a great eye. For those that may not, you can measure it and then go ahead and line it up, kind of like they do at the nail salon. I love to start my stitch length at least a 2.8 or a 3 for the outside. I just feel like the longer stitches give it a neater appearance. For me, I love the way it looks. I also start to stitch the top stitch in the corner. When the stitch is in a corner, it's just a neater look. You don't really, if you don't line them up exactly at the end, you don't really see that. So I like to start them in the corner. Always make sure that your pleats are flat when you go across. So kind of give them a little extra support as you go across them. This is where I add my tag, and this is why I said you'd see later why I like to start and end my stitch where I do. I like to keep it in the corner. I thought black would look cool, but then I decided on white since there's not a lot of black in this pattern. When I order my tags, I normally only order them in 2 different colors because black and white, you can pretty much make them go with everything. I didn't start off branding my masks, but I had a few people that love them telling me that I should go ahead and add my tags, which I was already thinking about, so I decided to go ahead and do it. And I fought with myself a little bit for placement, but this is the best placement in my opinion. You can always brand your items. I'm going to leave a link to the shop that I get my tags from in the description box. She's awesome. I've been using her for years now. You can see them at the end. I don't like to leave threads on my products, so I try to make sure I get them all trimmed off. You see me pulling them out there. Sometimes they get bunched up. And this is it. It's cute. It's stylish. This is actually a toddler size mask for my nephew. He loves Spider-Man. But you notice that I don't press my seams. That's only on masks because it is important to press your seams. But my demand for masks is so high, and I'm working by myself, so I don't have time to press the seams and get them out efficiently. And it doesn't really make too much of a difference because it's such a small project. And you see how neat it looks all the way around. It's reversible as long as it doesn't have a filter pocket. And that's one thing that people love. It's kind of like a surprise. I don't list that in my listing. So when they get it and they see that it's reversible, they love it. It's a cool little surprise. Thanks for watching.